This is a map of Cairo, the capital of Egypt. When we look towards the east, just outside of the country's capital, we see an open space that looks to be a desert. However, this desert is not just what we think it is. As we speak, there's a large project ongoing in the middle of this desert, and the magnitude of this project is set to shock the entire world. What huge project is Egypt working on, and why is it being constructed in a place with harsh conditions like the desert? Join us as we explore Egypt's new capital that just shocked the entire world. Located 35 kilometers east of Cairo with a total of 170,000 area units lies the mega project Egypt has been working on called the New Cairo Capital City. This new capital city is one huge project between the regional ring road, the Cairo-Suez Road, and the Cairo El Ain El Sokna Road just outside of Cairo. When you take a walk or drive across Cairo, you might be confused, wondering why a transcontinental country like the Arab Republic of Egypt is constructing a new capital and pondering if the Egyptian government kicked off the multi-billion-dollar project to meet an urgent need. Well, this mega project was not constructed because they wanted to, but because they had to. So yeah, we might as well theorize that the new capital city was built to satisfy and also save the country from imminent danger, almost caused by its own people. The Arab country of Egypt is currently battling a population increase in their country. As of March 1, 2023, the current population of Egypt is 107,460,026, based on Worldometer elaborations of the latest United Nations data. And Cairo, the country's capital city at the moment, is one of the most populated cities in the world, with a population density of 19,376 people per square kilometer. That is a huge problem, judging from the fact that this city is the country's capital. Due to the huge amount of people in the city, it proved to be a massive political challenge for the governmental activities done in this city. This makes the country seem like it's hardly functioning because embassies and ministries in the capital city often clog the city. As a matter of fact, several methods have been devised to control this issue, but it's only created more problems. Methods like blocking several streets to ensure security in government buildings and their occupants only led to more congestion because with the rates at which streets were blocked, it was nearly impossible to move from one location to another in the city. And this was a problem already. Based on analysis, the overpopulated capital's 22 million population is expected to double by 2050. That just spells more trouble for the city of Cairo and the country in general, judging from the current poverty and high fertility rates recorded in some parts of Egypt. The Egyptian government tried to curb this problem by starting a family planning campaign titled "Two is Enough," but that move wasn't the only reason why the country needed a new capital city. When you take a look at the maps of government buildings in country capitals like Washington, D.C. in the United States, you will see buildings like the Department of State, Department of the Interior, Department of Commerce, Department of Justice, and Federal Trade Commission. They are constructed in one area in order to solidify and simplify the ease of proceedings within the government. However, the case isn't the same for Cairo. The Egyptian ministries in Cairo are unfortunately scattered across the whole capital. This distribution of governmental buildings plays a major role in the capital city's congestion, with long distances included, which leads to heavy pollution in the capital city. Although not all government buildings are scattered across the city, there are some government buildings located close to each other in the city, like Mogama, which is located in downtown Cairo to the south of Tahrir Square. Close to Mogama is also the Ministry of Transportation, Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Foreign Trade and Industry, all situated around each other. Even the Parliament of Egypt is located among them, close to the Ministry of Transportation, as seen on the map of Cairo. And yet, despite the fact that these ministries and governmental buildings are located around each other, it still doesn't solve the problem of congestion, as the buildings are often overloaded. Buildings like the Mogama are often crowded by people, as it's the main administrative building where the requests of citizens are processed. And this congestion does not work well with other governmental buildings like the Parliament of Egypt, a building that requires special security measures and at certain times would have to be sealed off from the rest of the public. But with the fact that it's located in a capital city battling with growth pressure, the political administration activities were just a huge burden, and as a result posed several challenges, which brought the need to construct a new capital city. But why did they pick the desert of all places in Egypt to construct such a mega-project? The country was already filled with one structure or another in every place, and the only area left that could accommodate such a project with a huge design was the desert located just outside of Cairo. However, projects like this are not just being done for the first time. In the 1970s, the city of Cairo was starting to suffer from concentrated traffic congestion and acute pollution and overcrowding. As it was also fueled by industrialization, the city had been growing northward since the 1950s into the fertile delta, consuming precious farmland. This was a form of danger slowly approaching, so the government took action in the 1970s to combat this uneven sprawl by building new towns and planned suburbs in the desert. Places such as Madinat Sittah Uqtaba, Madinat al-Ashir min Ramadan, and Madinat al-Sadat. To give more insight, the first city to be built was the 10th of Ramadan city, whose work began in 1977. 2 years later, work began on the opposite side of Cairo, with the construction of the 6th of October city, and adjacent to the 6th of October city is Sheikh Zayed city, which was constructed in 1995. Going back to the east, close to the 10th of Ramadan city, are the cities of El-Sharouk, El-Obawa, Beida, and the city of Madinati. This area of the east is also where the largest project to date, New Cairo City, is located. Its construction began in 2000. These cities mentioned were not built only for the purpose of reducing the population density from Cairo, but to be constructed as separate metropolitan areas with their own local economy. Because of this, they were not built like other traditional suburbs like the ones in Cairo. Based on the map shows this new administrative capital, the mega-project is seen to house government agencies, the parliament, 30 ministries, embassies, and a breathtaking presidential compound. Not only does the new capital have areas for new governmental buildings, but it also has a space to house a whopping 6.5 million people when completed. Because it is built like a futuristic city, the Egyptian government ensured that they allocate 15 square meters of green space for each inhabitant in the new construction. The new capital city would also comprise a central green river, a combination of open water to look like a copy of the River Nile, and also planted greenery. This is a segment of the project estimated to be twice the size of Central Park located in New York. So you see, the project serves multiple purposes, including tackling pollution and a mission to make Egypt a greener environment. The mega-project is also set to have Africa's tallest building once completed, including a crystal pyramid and a vast disc-shaped palace for the Egyptian president, inspired by the symbols of an ancient Egyptian sun god. However, one thing that has to be reviewed about this new capital is the fact that this project seems much more than an altruistic effort from the government in a plan to decongest Cairo and improve the standard of living of the citizens currently living in the densely populated capital city. It's been over 6 years since the project kicked off, with an estimated cost of $59 billion, and this new capital city is clearly going to be the grandest of all mega-projects the world has ever seen. But at what cost is this project being constructed? A major part of this new capital city project is built by the Republic of Egypt's powerful military, with the Octagon building exerting its dominance over other buildings constructed on the desert project. This project as well makes the President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi the newest member to join the long line of ancient Egyptian leaders that have mirrored their authority through imposing structures that rise from the desert. The only difference between the ancient Egyptians and Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is that during the reign of ancient Egyptian kings, there was a flourishing economy. Centuries later, the case is not the same with Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's government, as the country is suffering majorly from a dreadful economic downturn. The country's finances have been seriously strained, and increasingly loud doubts are coming forth about whether the country will be able to pull through Mr. al-Sisi's grandiose project successfully. Over the past 6 years, the International Monetary Fund has granted 3 loans that sum up to $20 billion to Egypt. Imagine such a huge amount all in the space of 6 years. And that is not all. American aid kept flowing as well, yet the country's economy was still in such jeopardy. Maged Mandawa, an Egyptian political analyst, explained the current situation of the country, expatiating on how the president is focusing on the worst of projects. He said, "The president is borrowing money from abroad to build a massive city for the rich, but poor and middle-class Egyptians are paying the price tag for the mega projects through taxes, lower investment in social services, and subsidy cuts, even if the economic rationale for the development is questionable." He added, and although the financing for the new projects remains a bit hazy, the new projects' financing are supported in part by Chinese capital and high-interest bonds that will be very expensive for Egypt to repay in years to come. And to seal the deal, some Emirati developers are also working in the new capital. This problem had been going on for a while before it caught the global eye, as it was discovered that Egypt's total finance was in a fragile state, even before Russia started an altercation with Ukraine last February. The money used to fund the mega projects was borrowed by Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and he has also used billions of dollars in the purchase of international arms. This was an irrational move that has now tripled, even quadrupled, the country's national debt over a decade. And the sad thing is that the country is making too little to pay off its debts. Because of this economic situation and the rash decisions of the Egyptian president, foreign investors have decided to stay away from Egypt, with one of their sole reasons being the fact that they're discouraged from being a part of the country due to the military's tight grip on the economy. That, together with the absence of scale of preference and lack of focus on developing domestic industries, has led the private sector, apart from oil and gas, to contract every month for almost 2 years. As a matter of fact, the investment bank Goldman Sachs once announced that the Arab Republic of Egypt needed a $15 billion bailout from the International Monetary Fund in order to fend off its creditors. Egypt's finance minister, who asserted the fact that the country needs a new loan from the IMF, noted the actual sum being granted would be much smaller, and diplomats pegged the amount at $3 billion. And when Russia moved up on Ukraine last February, the effects on Egypt's economy were so bad it sent the country's financial house of cards tottering. As the price of food and interest rates rose in the summer, public finances became so strained that the government ordered stadiums, malls, and other public facilities to ration their air conditioning and also to dim the lights so they would be able to sell more energy abroad. How unbelievable! Based on this downturn, economists have warned that the country is one of those who run a significant risk of debt default. And even Mr. El-Sisi's supporters are bothered about the economic trouble that looms ahead. One such example was when Amma Adib, a popular television host and longtime supporter of the president, said in a statement, "The coming years are going to be so dark and horrific." Well, things might not go as bad as imagined, because Egypt has been saved before by some of its allies. Countries like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar invested over $20 billion in the country as of 2022. Even the United States, which backed an IMF bailout in 2016, came through with a regular supply stream of military aid. Although Mr. El-Sisi has received rare criticism from some of his supporters over his decisions with the megaprojects, he has advised vehemently that they go ahead. However, that does not mean his fragile economy will be able to support them. While the government has promised that the new cities will be forthcoming with millions of jobs and urgently needed housing, economists have analyzed and confirmed that most of the jobs created with the project's construction so far are low-paid construction gigs. Unless Mr. El-Sisi introduces bigger changes like loosening the military's economic grip and jump-starting private industry, they say that the benefits of the new projects will be short-lived. Ordinary Egyptians, squeezed by climbing prices and plunging living standards, have previously paid for Mr. El-Sisi's ambitious projects. In 2015, he rushed through an $8 billion extension to the Suez Canal that was heralded as the rebirth of Egypt, but it's failed to produce the promised windfall. The Suez Canal generated $6.3 billion in revenues last year, far below the original government projections of $13 billion by 2023. The first rumbles of discontent over the latest megaprojects sounded in 2019 when, during rare anti-government protests in Cairo, demonstrators chanted slogans taunting Mr. El-Sisi's wife, a reference to some suggestions that she had spent lavishly to refurbish a presidential palace. "So what if I have palaces?" Mr. El-Sisi said weeks later, after thousands had been jailed because of the protests. "They are for all Egyptians." Frankly, we can't affirm that this is for the Egyptians, judging from the role the military plays in constructing this project. The military owns 51% of the administrative capital for urban development, the company that facilitates the project, while the remaining 49% is owned by the Ministry of Housing. Also, the military is not only paying for the project, it will also reap huge financial benefits from this ambitious endeavor. The ACID, in which the military has the major stake, sells housing units that will be built in the new capital. Moreover, the company is also in charge of operating or selling the buildings in Cairo that will be vacated after embassies, ministries, and agencies relocate. Some of these buildings are in the very heart of Cairo, overlooking Tahrir Square, and have remarkable value. This means the military will get huge financial returns as soon as the new capital is completed and active. And yet these gains will not be inspected by a civilian body of government, as the government has little oversight over the military's finances. It is also not certain who will be able to reside in the new capital once it is completed. The housing units there are sold at very high prices. A 2-bedroom apartment in the new capital will be sold for an estimated $50,000, a large sum that is definitely out of reach of many citizens, not to talk of a country where the gross domestic product per capita is roughly $3,000. Based on these facts, it seems the new administrative capital is going to be another gated community for the rich and will do little to meet the housing needs of Cairo's poor and underprivileged residents. If the government does not take immediate steps to ensure the gates of this new city are also open to poorer citizens, this new project will do little to assist underprivileged Egyptians. This is why the new administrative capital is already perceived by several people as a huge waste of resources. Critics even say the money spent on building the new capital should have instead been used to enhance living conditions in the impoverished parts of what would soon be referred to as Old Cairo. However, in response to these critics, the government said the city will also comprise social housing, but did not explain when these units will be constructed and made available to those in need. This only gives a flashback of Hosni Mubarak's regime and its fall. The final decade of Mubarak's rule was underpinned by the rise of rich capitalist cliques helping the economy grow, but at the same time blocking the benefits of this growth from getting to the poorer parts of the country. And one of the most vibrant slogans heard in the January 2011 protests that toppled the Mubarak regime was social justice. With this project, which will possibly make the country's rich richer, the military stronger, and add to the ever-increasing poor distribution of resources, Al-Sisi seems to be wallowing in the mistakes that led to Mubarak's downfall. So if the project is not going to help the people and build their support for the government, why is Al-Sisi moving forward with this large project? Egypt's new administrative capital may not help ordinary Egyptians much, but it will provide some key benefits for President Al-Sisi. To start with, this new project will be a magnet that would help bring Egypt's powerful businesses to Al-Sisi's side. During former President Mubarak's regime, the private sector had major economic and political clout in Egypt, but after Al-Sisi took over, it has mostly been put aside by the military and reduced to a secondary actor. In neoliberal economies like Egypt's, authoritarian governments require the private sector's support in order to maintain stability. Also, Al-Sisi knows that a huge construction effort, like building a new capital, would be the best way to win businesses. While the military will probably be the one that gets the most from the new administrative capital's construction, the project is so large and looks so profitable that it will also create opportunities for the private sector once completed. To give more insights, one of Egypt's biggest construction companies, Talat Mustafa Group, has set the foundations for a smart city project called Noor City to be located in the new administrative city. Projects like this incentivize the private sector to support the government and supply major tax revenues. Noor City, for example, is predicted to generate estimated tax revenue of $7 billion. The new capital could also give Al-Sisi the legitimacy he needs because while the new administrative capital does not bear Al-Sisi's name, the project is perceived as his flagship project and legacy. The state-controlled media are obsessively covering his constant visits to the city, so it's not possible to think of the new city without thinking or mentioning Al-Sisi. Also, the main mosque in the new administrative capital is named Al-Fatah Al-Alim, which means the opener, knowledgeable, but some see it as a connotative reference to the president who bears Abd el-Fattah. Lastly, and maybe the most vital point, is that the new project will give an edge for Al-Sisi to control any future revolt that could be staged against his regime and consolidate his power. On February 11, 2011, the Egyptians protested from Tahrir Square down to Mubarak's presidential palace with the aim of forcing him to resign. Once the president relocates to the new administrative capital located outside of Cairo, it would be impossible for such public demonstrations to take place again. The state has already affirmed that the new capital would be well guarded with state-of-the-art electronic monitoring systems, and more importantly, it will be very far away from Tahrir Square and every other public arena where Egyptians can come together to voice their anger about those ruling over them. So do you think that this new Egypt capital is nothing but a show of glory for the Egyptian president, or is he really constructing this building for the people? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below.